And
Maybe, yeah.
okay, now you're good. Now you're good. I'm so sorry. Go for
Okay,
it.
y'all can Zoom hear me now? Zoom, can you hear me? Are they good now?
Yes.
Okay, let's start over. Let's take it from the top. Okay, hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2023 Legacies and Lunch, a program of the CALS Butler Center for Arkansas Studies. I'm Heather Register-Zabindon, the Programs and Website Coordinator for the Bobby L. Roberts Library of Arkansas History and Art. We're part of the Central Arkansas Library System. So if you're here in room 124, you can get deals all day at the galleries and bookstore at Library Square on Arkansas books, on Butler Center books, as well as gently read Arkansas titles. That's 50% off on Legacies and Lunch Day. And if you want to sign up for our e-newsletter, if you don't already get our emails, you should, because you'll know about everything that's going on at Roberts and some of the stuff that's going on at CALS. So you can either sign up with Madeline here in the room, or you can go to our website, robertslibrary.org, and sign up there directly. And please consider donating to the CALS Foundation. You can support our programs here at the Butler Center and the Encyclopedia of Arkansas by making a monthly recurring or a one-time, but we'd love a monthly recurring donation. So go to robertslibrary.org or encyclopediaofarkansas.net to support our programs. Today's talk is being live streamed to YouTube and will be available directly or right after this on the CALS YouTube channel. So go there and check it out. You can also share the link with friends, because you know everybody's going to want to hear about this. Today's speaker will answer questions after or at the end of the session, although it's going to be a little interactive, so you will have a chance. Folks on Zoom, you can put your questions in the chat box and we will ask them. So this month, this is what you came for. This month, we are joined by Courtney Bradford to talk about, in our own words, Black voices from the archives. Courtney is a native of Little Rock. She's the curator at the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center. She's the first Black female to hold that position and the only Black curator employed by the state of Arkansas, which speaks volumes in so many ways. So please give Courtney a warm welcome to do her program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather. I would like to first and foremost thank you all for coming and taking time out of your busy schedules to come and eat lunch with me and to learn a little bit about a few of the artifacts that we have available in the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center collection, and then how it is so important for African Americans to be able to document and preserve their own histories. Once again, I'd like to thank Heather and the Central Arkansas Library System for inviting me to give this presentation. It is such an honor to present on one of the topics that I'm so very passionate about. And also to my colleagues at MTCC. I work for a nationally accredited world-class museum, and I'm so proud to work for that institution. And so I'm giving my colleagues a shout out. They are awesome. They are world-class staff, and this presentation is for you all, as well as for all who seek to document their own histories. So I am here today because I stand on the shoulders of giants. We are here today because we stand on the shoulders of giants. Like Heather said, I am from Little Rock. I was raised in part by my grandparents, who were both educators before and after segregation. They sold into me and my siblings the importance of education. My grandmother especially reiterated the idea of to always tell the truth. I attended the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, where I received my bachelor's degree in anthropology, African and African American studies with a minor in history. While there, I was given the opportunity to study abroad in Ghana, West Africa. And I tell many people that that study abroad opportunity absolutely changed my life in ways that I had no idea that it would. Upon returning to Little Rock, I attended the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, where I received my master's in public history. One of the most pivotal things that I learned is that it is an injustice to those who lived, survived, and thrived in the past if we do not tell their stories the way that they were. As a historian, anthropologist, instructor, and now curator, it has been my mission and my motto to always tell it like it was. During Black History Month, it is a time where we reflect on the great accomplishments and historical events related to Black Americans. Today, I'm wanting to do something a little bit different. I'm going to use artifacts in my collection, like I said before, in order to show you all just how important it is for us to document our own histories. Like Heather said, I am the first Black curator in Mosaic Templars Cultural Center. I'm also the only Black curator employed by the state of Arkansas, which are very large shoes to fill. With that, I'm often seen as the keeper of my community's history, which at times can be a blessing and a curse. When you walk into a museum, oftentimes, of course, you see exhibitions and you see artifacts as well. And I'm often approached by patrons who don't see themselves in the museum. They often wonder, well, why is my relative not featured in the exhibition? Or why is there not an artifact within our collection that tells their story? And then I go on to talk to them about the mission of our museum, which is to preserve, interpret, and to collect history. It is also my job to be very objective about the things that we bring into our collection. But because I'm from Little Rock, because I'm a part of the African-American community here in Little Rock, I add an extra layer of care and concern when it comes to the stories that are presented to me. A lot of times the stories are told via oral histories, which is very important to African-Americans because this is how we've been passing down our stories for generations and generations. I sit and listen to these oral histories and I take them all in. And then I even go further to do research to confirm those things, to see, can I really put this into my museum? That is why I believe it is so important for African-Americans to take ownership of their own history, which is often easier said than done when you're constantly interrupted due to gatekeeping of that history. As a historian and as a curator, I do not want to be a gatekeeper to that history. I want to hold the gate open. And that's what I have been doing. I've been holding the gate open for future Black curators and archivists and other museum professionals as well that might have felt that they didn't belong in those spaces. I was once that person as well, but now I take up space and I take up a lot of space. And so I'm holding that gate open also for families and individuals and organizations to actively pursue the documentation and preservation of their histories for generations to come. We know that if things aren't properly documented, it is easy for one to say that it did not happen at all. Even today, we're still finding out new things about Greenwood and Tulsa, about Elaine, about Emmett Till. Stories that have been kept close to the heart out of fear of retribution, or that the story itself will no longer be theirs. The proof is in the pudding. Much research has been done and articles and books have been written and published about Black history. And the majority of these authors are white men. Oh, how the perspective changes when you actually include a Black storyteller and the importance of being a Black person telling that story. Now you're introduced to new things that you might not have seen from a different perspective. Now we get to see from the inside of the community what the story really is. Okay, this is the right side. So oftentimes, like I said, people come in asking about how come they're not in the museum? And so I have kind of broken down in a very simple way the process in which we verify history. So I know now some of us work for the state and we have our phones and we have our computers and we have to go through these verification processes in order to get into our computers, get into our phones. So in order to get into history, we kind of go through a 3-step verification process. So like I said earlier, majority of people come in and they're telling me stories. They're talking about oral histories. We know that oral history and storytelling comes from West Africa. griots, which are storytellers, would train for years and years to be able to keep the history of their tribes alive. They're training them from young children into adults so they can be able to pass these stories down from generation to generation. We see that here again in America, especially in Arkansas. So we're constantly passing down these stories. That's how it gets started. It's a story. It's a story. My grandfather told me such and such, such and such. It's a story. Now, my next step is, how can we prove that? I'm looking for a tangible object. I'm looking for an artifact that speaks to those stories that are being told so that I can say, yes, definitively, this happened. I can put my hand on it. It happened. And then my next step is confirmation. So I have my oral history story and I have my object. Now I'm going to tie it together to confirm that this is what you say it is. My prime example of that will be an artifact that I just acquired not too long ago. Back. Yes, I'll go back.
What is it?
While she fixes that, this object, this artifact that I'm about to show you all, it really just came in as a surprise that day. Oh,
maybe.
is that okay? Oh, okay. This artifact came as a surprise. So this ledger, and I'm not sure if you all have ever heard of the Negro Chamber of Commerce. No?
No, never heard of it.
Never heard of it. So this ledger was donated by an 84-year-old woman who said that she found the ledger along with a colored city directory inside of Miller Funeral Home, which was located at the corner of 10th and High Street, which is now Martin Luther King Drive. The funeral home was being demolished, and she saw these, what I say now is an artifact, but she saw these objects and she decided to save them. In saving them, at that time, she felt that there was not an institution or a place that could properly preserve and document that history. So she held on to these artifacts for 30 years. And it was delivered to my museum just about a month ago. And when I opened the ledger up, I was like, oh, it's a ledger. I've seen these, it's another ledger. But when you start flipping through the pages, I see this page that says minutes from the Negro Chamber of Commerce. And I said, what? What is this? I've heard things. See, that's the oral history. I've heard a few things, rumblings about something very similar to that within our African-American community here, but there was nothing concrete. So in reading this is an excerpt, and it's kind of hard to read a bit, but they're talking about really neat things, such as having a Negro Day at the livestock show. We know the livestock show is the Arkansas State Fair. It also talks about paying poll taxes for African Americans to be able to vote. The ledger included names of people such as William A. Stringfield, who was the president of the organization. He was a prominent lawyer here in Little Rock. W.L. Jarrett was the executive secretary. He was one of the founders of Ruffin and Jarrett Funeral Home here in Little Rock. And attorney J.R. Booker was also a very prominent attorney. But in doing research on the Negro Chamber of Commerce and doing research on these individuals that I saw listed within the ledger, there was absolutely nothing that confirmed that this organization existed. Nothing. And that's interesting. Giving the minutes of their meetings, they were moving and shaking. So it definitely wasn't, I say, something that just came overnight. They were moving, they were doing things. One of the biggest things I saw was them wanting to educate Black young men on legislative matters. They wanted them to be able to know the law so that they can use the law for their benefit as well. And even continuing to do more research, the only place that I saw the Negro Chamber of Commerce listed on the internet was on the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce website. And it spoke to the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce donating money to the Urban League in order to have spaces for them. And they listed Negro Chamber of Commerce. It is the only place that's listed. When I called to verify, there was some denial about what it was. And it said, no, that never existed, that never happened. So my job has been to dig deeper. So because I am tied and connected to the community, a few of these names and others that I have not listed, their families are still here. And so I have reached out to them to come look at the ledger and to come give me more information about it so that I can properly document that and preserve it for their histories. And so eventually there will be an article, there will be a book talking about the Negro Chamber of Commerce and their impacts on Central Arkansas. Get that, that's next. So we talk about the documentation of history, and I can't fail to mention Ralph Armstrong. We recently did an exhibition on Ralph Armstrong, who was a local photographer who managed to capture history in Little Rock and Central Arkansas. He photographed churches, families, individuals, and I like to call him a freelance historian. I'm not sure if he knew that he was a freelance historian, but what he was able to capture, we can see into how the Black community lived. And so the exhibition that I had was called Unboxing Armstrong, and it was for patrons to come in to help identify photographs within his collection. There are over 1,000 photographs in the Ralph Armstrong collection, and the majority of them have no provenance. We don't know who are in the photographs. We don't know what's going on in the photographs. We can assume a lot of different things. And so I was tasked with, okay, I believe that somebody here knows who these people are, and they can help me with this because this is their history too. And this photograph here was actually one of the first ones I pulled out. Because I said, these people look great. They're good looking. They're nice looking. Nice looking people. And I said, I know somebody knows these people. Like, I know. And y'all, once they believe it or not, on the very last day of this exhibition, the granddaughter of these two lovely people, she said she saw the picture on the news. And she said, oh, those are my grandparents. Those are my grandparents. What are they? They're at the museum. And so they ran down there and happily filled out my form, because I had a form for the patrons to fill out, to tell me who the people were and what was going on. So they said, this is Tommy Harrell Sr. and Margaret Miller Harrell. They are from the East End of Little Rock. They were married in 1941. And so this photograph, they believe, was taken a little after that time. But then that's the magic in it. And I told them, I said, Ralph Armstrong took so many pictures. I have so many pictures of funerals, of weddings, of piano recitals. And people actually had the opportunity to come in and fill those forms out. Similar to my next photo. Uh-oh. This is also from the Ralph Armstrong collection, one of the photos that were on display. And so this photo, I chose this one because so many people were filling this out and telling me who everybody was in the photograph. So this is the Trinity chapter of the Order of Eastern Star here. And so patrons were able to tell me exactly who these people were, even kind of what their job descriptions were. And so that allows me to go into putting this into the system and saying, this is the Order of Eastern Star Trinity chapter. These are the members. And so I put them into my Past Perfect system, which houses all of my collection online. And I put it in there. And so when I put it in there, I can come back in and say, Order of the Eastern Star. And it's gonna pop this beautiful picture up. Or I can type in an individual's name like Annie Hightower, and this picture will pop up. Before, it would have never popped up. It would have never popped up this picture for Order Eastern Star or any individual that is actually in this photograph. And so that's my job to do that. Same with this photo. Mostly everyone in the African American community knows about Dunbar, and they love Dunbar. And so many people were able to name the individuals in this photo. I even have a church member in this photo as well. So it's really neat. And then even with my connection to Dunbar, being able to see these photographs, being able to identify them was so powerful for me, so powerful. So with Unboxing Armstrong, because it was such a big hit, Even after the exhibition closed, people were knocking down the door trying to view these photographs. And in the exhibition, there were only about 100 of them. And like I kept telling them, there's 1,000, there's at least 1,000. And so from there, I decided to create a program, which will begin later this year, called Preservation Saturdays. And it will have people come in from the community to do this very thing that the exhibition had you all do, which is to look through these photographs, help identify the individuals and organizations, and then allow us to begin the provenance and the proper documentation so that people come back and look and say, hey, let's pull up that Boy Scout picture with the boys, and that was me. So that's really big for me, because Ralph Armstrong was able to document things that we don't even have anymore, like Scipio A. Jones High School. It's no longer there, but we do have a picture of that high school, as well as other structures that were either demolished within the African-American community that he saw fit to document for us to be able to see them physically. A lot of these places and a lot of these people are only memories in our minds, but to be able to hold them in our hands now is very powerful. Along with that, I mentioned S.A. Jones. Our next exhibition that will open up next Thursday is called The Arc of Justice, The Life and Legacy of Scipio A. Jones. I'm really excited about that because we're able to now tell that story. For a long time, even within the situation of the post office, people were kind of mumbling about S.A. Jones. It was kind of just low rumblings. Now there's going to be a Hollywood movie. And now we have the opportunity to tell his story about his life, about his legacy through artifacts. And then people will be able to see that as we continue to reclaim our voices, as we continue to reclaim our history. I encourage each and every individual at any level to continue to document, to continue to collect, to continue to preserve their histories for the next generations. I live by a model also. I mentioned that I went to Ghana. There is a saying, Sankofa, which means to go back and to get. To go back and to get. And I changed the interpretation to say, if you don't know where you're coming from, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So we have to continue to preserve this for generations to come. Happy Black History Month.
Yeah, longer than you would think.
Okay, there it goes.
Right.
Okay.
I missed
I
my
guess,
computer.
I hope I don't get too close to the. That's fabulous. We have a couple of questions on Zoom and then a question from the audience. So Christy Jennings says, documenting information for these photos seems so daunting. Is there an opportunity to for volunteers to come help record or transfer the information on the forums for you?
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, yes, and yes. So that is why I was saying the program Preservation Saturdays, because so many people responded positively to it and they volunteered right there in the museum. So definitely, I say look for on our website, look to social media posts coming up throughout the year, but definitely there'll be times for y'all to come in and assist me in helping document these photographs.
Okay, here is another question. Well, it's a comment about, this woman has a friend who lived in Dunbar and worked with the mentoring group until her sight got too bad. She's on the EOA now, the Encyclopedia of Arkansas now. She'd like to know what year the photo from Dunbar, what year that was.
This is the early 1950s. Mm-hmm. I believe it's in the early 90s, because this, I know for a fact there's a picture somewhere else too. Yeah.
It's a great picture. Someone says happy Black History Month. The U of A is so, this is Sarah Drain. The U of A is so proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's a new question. Will Mosaic be offering any workshops or assistance on preservation of old photographs?
Yes, that also will go along with the Preservation Saturdays. It's something I'm working on. So definitely, like I said, look for it on our website and social media, but it is coming.
And okay, let's see. Any questions from the audience? Would you like the microphone, man?
Fabulous information. I won't talk much because I get really, like the older I get, the more emotional I get. When it's connected to the history. Because I think so much. And that it's lost. So thank you for doing the work and for carrying enough to do the work. Every name matters. Thousands of names that are not listed. Yeah. I think we make it easier for people who have like family members and community members, easy to access the information and to be able to share it. So a lot of them have things that are at home that are just kind of sitting there and we're waiting and waiting and then someone dies and then it goes somewhere to thing. So the Saturdays are a great idea. What are some things that we can do? And now they're bringing the digital age. Are there ways that people can scan things, can scan them and just send people's photos? Like what's it easy, like a quick way, even for people who may not be in Arkansas, because a lot of people travel and move and they get greater amount of stuff and they're somewhere else. So what's an easy way for people to have accessibility to be able to send it to you? Or is there an easy way if they're not necessarily right here, or maybe they don't want to, which they should.
So a lot of times people call me and we talk on the phone about it and I have them email, if they can scan those things in, if they're far away, they'll email it to me. I've had people send things in the mail all the way from New York, from California, of artifacts that they want to donate to the museum, as well as if you're in Little Rock, I have always welcomed people to come and get their documents scanned. And so when I scan them at the highest resolution, not only to add to our collection, but for them to have it as well, so that if they wanted to produce it in any sort of way that they could. And then I go on to talk to them about the proper ways for them to preserve that, the proper the sleeves and wearing the gloves and the archival boxes. And so what I want, my vision is for the Preservation Saturdays is to offer those materials to people who come, inform them on how to document it, but then offer those materials so they can continue to document those things they do find in grandma's attic, or when they want to move out the house and now look at all this stuff we have. Because a lot of things that I have acquired since I began at the museum have been things that have been found in grandma's attic.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in grandma's attic.
Yeah.
Say, I'll add to that, that here at CALS, we have the River Lab, and we teach people how to do their own personal archiving and scan all of their stuff. So people can also come use our facility to scan things that you may not be interested in. I'm interested in everything, but you can take everything.
Right.
Because sometimes people do take everything. I'm after myself.
A little bit.
Yeah, you can, people can come and use our new lab, scan, digitize VHS, and beta. So that's available here as well. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Oh, I guess. What time period did that ledger cover?
1941 until, no, not 1949 until about 1953. The ledger itself, there were a few pages missing in the front of it. And then kind of as you go through it, some of the dates are not consistent. And so in the light research I do realize at one point the president of the organization, he fell ill. And so then you don't see meetings for a certain period of time, or it's mentioned that he's not available to come to that meeting. This person presided instead. And then the ledger kind of ends. And I'm like, what happened? Like, it starts out of nowhere and it ends out of nowhere. And there's nothing. So I'm looking deep. So that's something when I looked at it and I started researching and I found there was nothing, I said, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna finish this history right here. So
it'll come. Things will pop up. It's always interesting how you'll look at it now and it'll trickle in your brain. A couple of months, maybe a couple of years from now, something else is gonna pop up. And you're gonna go, this is together.
Yes, it's together. And that's the confirmation. The part like, it's together now. I'm like, great. That's what I'm working hard. It's like, where is that? confirmation.
And I loved your talking about, verification, confirmation, because oral histories were so important, but we all know that memory plays tricks,
Mhm.
right? And so using the oral history as a base,
Mhm.
and verifying with other information is so important.
Mhm.
So I'm glad to hear that. Yes, ma'am.
Where did the Ralph Armstrong collection come from? Where did it originate? How did it pass through different hands to get to where you?
So
If you could, Courtney, if you could repeat that for Zoom, because the mic wasn't over.
Okay.
Ralph Armstrong collection come from? How did it get to Mosaic Templars?
So the Ralph Armstrong collection came directly from the Ralph Armstrong family. So he, like I said, he was a photographer here, but he had a studio in Little Rock as well. And so after he passed away, of course, the studio was closed. My colleague, Brian Rogers, actually has a really good relationship with their family, and he was able to convince them to donate those materials to the museum. So it's an amazing collection. It's one of the largest that we have. So we, on top of photographs, we have cameras, camera equipment, enlargers, anything that you would need in a studio in order to produce your own photographs. We do have a part of his collection.
And I'll add, I worked with Mosaic Templars for a little while, and I'll add that was a long, I mean, we worked really hard to get that collection starting in 05, 06, developing a relationship with the family, know that they could trust that institution was really important. So yeah, it's a really good collection.
And I'm glad that you said that, because even like in this work that we're doing, building those relationships with families within the community allows us to acquire things that if we didn't have those relationships, we simply would not have them. And so that's very important, like I said, to continue those links with the community, continue building those relationships so that we can preserve those histories that are lesser known or not known at all.
And Ralph Armstrong had a studio. He's a studio photographer as well as doing kind of man about town in the street, taking photographs. He had a portrait studio as well. So, any other questions? Double check soon. Here's the question. As you look at artifacts, is there a date cutoff or specific artifacts that you have been specifically looking for?
I would say that yes, I'll say there's a long list of artifacts that even the previous curator has compiled and for that he was looking for. There are a few things that I'm looking for, especially dealing with the John H. Johnson collection that I started. I have lots of ebony magazines. I even have Negro Digest magazines. So I'm looking for more of those because those kind of fell into my lap as well. I said, what is this? As he will say, my director would say, it's just, I have a touch and things just keep happening for me. Artifacts keep popping into my lap and stories are keep being told. And then, but as far as the time period, our time period is kind of broad at the museum. So anything that fits within African-American history and culture, I can make it work. I can make it work, definitely. But a time period, just anything that relates to those things. And then we'll go deep into what the provenance is, what the significance is in Arkansas.
So for those that don't know, John H. Johnson, who was the publisher for Jet and Ebony magazine, is from Arkansas, because as one of my colleagues says, Arkansas runs the world. He's from Arkansas City, Arkansas, and moved to Chicago when he was 11 with his mom. And we have an entry in the Encyclopedia of Arkansas on him. So yeah, so we run the world.
Yes,
Arkansas is everything. Well, thank you. Oh, did you have a question, Joe? Wait.
In your opinion, what's the most interesting thing in Mosaic Templars collection that's not right now?
Ooh, the most interesting thing.
What would you like to see?
Okay, I got the okay to be honest. I'll say the most interesting thing, and it was one of the first artifacts that I sessioned when I came to the museum, is actually a Ku Klux Klan robe. So that was very interesting. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, what's this? I said, let me go ahead and accession this. And so to accession it, to know where it came from, which it was, from my understanding, in an attic in the Quapaw area. And so when they were cleaning it out, they found this robe and they donated it to the museum. And so to be able to look at it, to, measure it out, lay it out the way it's supposed to be, and just imagine, because it has a few stains on it. And so as an African-American, and then as a historian, I'm looking at it 2-3 different ways, but still having to do right by it and understand that it's a tragic part of African-American history. It's a tragic part of American history, but it still needs to be documented. It still needs to be preserved. So I did my part. I preserved and documented that robe. It's in our collection.
Talk a little bit about what's coming up with Mosaic Templars. What changes are happening?
Big changes, big things are happening. So I did mention our exhibit that's opening up next Thursday, but this year it is the 140th anniversary of the Mosaic Templars of America. It's also the 15th anniversary of MTCC. And with that, we'll be doing a grand reopening and we'll have new exhibitions. So our permanent exhibition space on the first floor will be completely brand new. New stories will be told, new colors, it's interacting. I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about it because I've been working really hard on it since I started Mosaic, and to see it all come into fruition and to see the community to be able to enjoy it and to interact with it. I'm really excited, really, really, really excited. I almost can't even explain how excited I am.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for all of them. It's great. I'm glad to see the changes are happening. Any other questions from the room? Let me check.
We got like 3 in Zoom now.
Okay, my phone did something funny. Let's try this again. There we go. Now I gotta get down to, there we go. Will you please share the info about the speaker?
Oh.
Maybe I didn't. Okay, so that's the woman who has the friend who went to Dunbar, and I'll make sure that you get the name.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
How long does it normally take for a collection or exhibit to be developed and curated?
Like, ooh. I was just saying, why you ask that question? Well, I guess it depends on how elaborate you want it to be. I'll say at least 1 year, because you're needing to do research on the subject. You're needing to collect those artifacts for the exhibition as well. So at least a year, and especially, I guess it depends on like how elaborate you want it to be, how fancy. Do you high key, low key? So I'll say at least a year. Yeah. In-house, are we gonna get a consultant? Is this traveling? What are we doing? So it depends.
That is a good question. And thank you for that good laugh.
I was like,
regarding the KKK room, were you able to trace the history?
I tried to trace the history because along with the robe came a membership card. And so I tried to trace the history of that individual. Couldn't really come across much information about it. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to know. But I did attempt, because there is a card that goes along with it, but it kind of stops there. So, but what I can say about it is it seems to be whoever wore the robe was either a small person, like a smaller in stature person, or maybe it was like a teenager or something, like a small, because the neck is really, really small when you button it up. And so I can tell that this was a small person. No, I don't believe it was a woman's robe.
Did you have her name?
Yes, I do have their name. So no, I think that would be something to definitely look into, to figure out where they were buried, and then more than likely do the research from there. Yes, I'm like, well. Yes.
Maybe it's Mel Holly
or yeah, somewhere around here that they were definitely young. And it's not, and I'll say the robe itself, if you have never seen a KKK robe in person, a lot of times when we see them, they're kind of elaborate. This one is not as elaborate as ones that we've seen in other places, but it does have a cape. So there's a robe that has a cape extension, and then there's an actual cape that goes over it. with the hood. So we have the hood, the cape, the robe.
You want to talk about the emotions that came with a session we had?
Yes, I can. Like I said, it was kind of hard. Like I said, it was me, it was a duality. I am Courtney, the African-American doing this accessioning, but then I'm Courtney, the curator who's doing the accessioning. And so I'm doing like I said, the proper steps, but like I said, noticing there's stains here. Is this a stain from violence that was done? Is this a stain from whatever was going on around it? So those are things that popped in my head. And then, you know, you have to take photographs of these artifacts. And to get a good photograph of the hood, I had to set it up and, you know, put it up and kind of stuff it to where, okay, this is that. I'm like, this is a bit much. It's a bit much, but I had to do that part. And that's why I quickly accessioned it and quickly put it in STML. So to me, like my thing, let me get this up out of here. And so that's what I did. I got it up out there and put it on the shelf. Like, that's where it is.
So here's a question. What about storytelling? My dad, 79 years old, had a conversation with my son about being a 12-year-old in the Arkansas Delta the summer that Emmetsville was murdered. So storytelling and capturing those stories. How should people do that?
So the best way to do it is by recording it. If you have a fancy recorder, I say a fancy recorder is like a Marantz. But even if you have audio on your phone, we all have phones, we all have audio recorders. So just sit it down and let them talk. Let them talk. And either you can transcribe it, or you can take it to the Butler Center, or you can take it to the museum, and we can transcribe it. A lot of times when you do that, you can place them on archival gold disc in order to preserve them for longer periods of time, but definitely record it. Even, I'll say the best one is if you have a video camera. You have a video camera, set it up, because now I can see this person talking, not only hearing them, but I can see them. That's another verification thing to me. It's like, okay, now I see the person telling me the story and I can confirm that, okay, yes, this is one way that this happened. But definitely before anything happens to him, I would sit down and record it. And that was one thing I remember my grandmother would tell, like she would tell a million stories about a million different things. My grandmother, everything. But one thing I regret is that I didn't sit down to record her. It's in my head, but I can't, I can't say for sure this is it, because it was her story to tell. And so definitely older people, they have that story. Just sit down, put your phone there and let them talk.
Well, and make sure they're in a comfortable place. Like sometimes if you take them someplace, they're not comfortable. My grandmother was always more comfortable in her chair, and if they'll let you record them, that's great.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Courtney, someone asked you a question about things that you are like interested in that you would like to see. Could you talk about COVID and Black that Mosaic Templars is doing?
Yes, and so COVID and Black was an amazing opportunity to tell the African-American experience through COVID. And so a lot of the artifacts that we've gotten we have protest signs, PPEs, prescriptions and things, personal stories, and that's something we still are collecting. It's small on the personal level. It's larger on newspaper articles and videos and things, but we definitely want more artifacts in that collection. So anyone who can bring anything that speaks to their experience as African-American during COVID, that would be amazing, because that is another collection that we are working on.
And when's the museum open, and do you have anything special going on? I know you do. Like, where can people find out more information about what's going on?
So we are open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. Tuesday, I forgot. We're not, I go to work on Monday. I go to work on Monday. We're not open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5. And for more information at Mosaic Templars Cultural Center.com. And of course, we're doing something Black History Month. Well, of course, that's about the exhibit opening. You all can come tour the museum anytime during this month. I believe we're doing the Poet Laureate with the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame, my people. Story time. Story time each Saturday. We'll be reading stories in the Children's Gallery. This Saturday is me. So I'll be reading a story at noon. for children. And then each following Saturday, there'll be a staff member who'll be reading a story as well.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So next month on March 1st at noon, am I in the shop?
You're good.
Oh, you good?
You just said it.
Okay. I am everywhere all the time. So next month, Rhonda Stewart is going to talk about her family and strong Black women in her family that shaped her. That's going to be Wednesday, March 1st at noon here in room 124, as well as on Zoom. So please join us again. Thank you again, Courtney. That was fabulous.
You're welcome.
Check out Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, y'all. It's really cool.